The adventure begins in the middle of an intense battle, where a group of heroes faces a dragon of overwhelming strength. Little by little, the creature gains ground and ends up striking one of Dennis's companions. Without hesitating, he heals her with his abilities, but the look in the eyes of some of the others reveals feelings that are far from noble. Envy and irritation are impossible to hide. In a decisive moment, one of the members of the group lands a precise strike on the dragon's eye, creating an opening for victory to be achieved. That blonde-haired warrior uses the moment to remind everyone of who they are, members of Argentina, the most powerful party in the world. According to him, losing is not an option. A few days later, that same man named Vigo, the leader of the team and an adventurer of level 99, summons all members for a serious meeting. He points at Dennis as the only one responsible for the failure of the last mission. According to him, if Dennis had not resorted to his ability known as Terrifying Voice, the dragon would not have managed to escape. To Vigo, that power caused the disaster. Dennis tries to explain, saying he only used the ability because he was instructed by Vigo himself. But the blonde man denies any responsibility and reinforces the accusation. Dennis would have acted on his own, perhaps even with the intention of sabotaging the group. He even goes as far as insinuating that Dennis might be a spy sent by another party of adventurers. And with that, the sentence is given. Dennis is out of Argentina, expelled permanently. Stunned, the young man tries to understand how that happened. Some colleagues seem to disagree with the decision, but no one opposes it directly. Dennis accepts the expulsion with dignity. If they do not want him there, he will not insist. But Vigo is still not finished. He says that a cook like Dennis should never have been part of a team of that level. This declaration irritates him deeply. Dennis asks if there is anything wrong with being a cook. Vigo replies that there is. Argentina is a group made of warriors, mages, and swordsmen, specialists in combat. To him, even if Dennis is as experienced as he is, accepting him was a mistake. The tension rises, but Dennis remains firm. If that was the group's belief, then there was nothing more to be done. With that resolved, he decides to leave the capital. Along the way, he accidentally gets in the way of a little girl and her balloon ends up slipping away. Dennis tries hard to get it back, jumping twice to reach it, and succeeds. After that, he advises the girl never to let go of something important. That sentence carries a heavier meaning for him. Dennis also has something essential in his life and understands he can no longer let go of it. Vigo watches the scene from afar. He seems satisfied, as if he were beginning something he had already planned. At the moment Dennis is about to leave, a young red-haired woman named Kate reaches him. Wanting to understand why he was expelled, she is visibly worried, and points out that if Dennis leaves, no one else will know how to prepare potions, handle alchemy, or cook the way he does. The quality of the group's life would fall drastically. As soon as they enter the shop, she asks why he decided to buy that item. Dennis tries to reassure her, saying other people know these abilities as well. But Kate insists, since Dennis arrived, the group's performance in the dungeons improved immensely, and today they are considered the best in the world. She knows the group does not understand how much he has protected them until now. Without him, things simply will not be the same. She begs him to return, or everything might fall apart. Dennis, however, is unmoved. He says the past is behind him and there is no return. Kate still tries to argue, asking him to stay at least to prepare tonight's dinner and a few future meals. For Dennis, this only shows how the group's view of him never changed. It was as if his contributions were limited to the kitchen. Still shaken, Kate asks what he is going to do from now on. Dennis answers that he intends to open a restaurant, but she insists that he stay. As vice captain, she even tries to give him an order. Even so, he has already made his decision. Dennis knows that Vigo has interest in her, and keeping contact now would be a mistake. The truth is that his phase as an adventurer has come to an end, but his new life as a cook is only beginning. Some time later, already far away, Dennis finds in a shop a magical object capable of preserving food without using ice, which in our terms would be an ordinary freezer. He becomes excited, already imagining how that could be useful in his restaurant. But suddenly, he remembers a book he read about culinary enterprises. The author warned about the risks of the initial investment. Thinking it through, Dennis decides to leave the object aside and use ice magic instead. He feels he made the right decision and, from that moment on, chooses to follow the advice from the book. How to Open a Restaurant Faithfully. A Manual for Former Adventurers. A very specific title, one that instantly grabs your attention. The first step, according to the book, is finding a cheap abandoned property to renovate. Then it's time to contact suppliers and acquire the necessary utensils. For Dennis, all of that is exciting. Every stage brings him closer to his new dream. But the next challenge in the manual is more complicated. No one can run a restaurant alone. It's essential to rely on helpers to deal with the customers. And then, in the middle of the street, he hears a man offering someone as if she were a product. A young woman who, according to him, once belonged to a noble family that was exiled. The situation is infuriating. Dennis realizes that because she comes from a noble lineage, she attracted the interest of all sorts of dangerous people. He feels the urge to do something, but he knows he cannot get involved in every injustice he sees. Living like that would not be possible unless he looked directly into her eyes. And something in that gaze brings him an old memory, something he once felt before. The auction begins and the bids rise quickly. Someone even offers 800,000 piss, the local currency. Without thinking, Dennis finds himself offering 1 million, but the same seller from the previous shop offers 1.5 million. Dennis understands, just from the man's expression, that he cannot allow the girl to fall into his hands, so he offers 2 million. The other man offers 3. The dispute continues, and Dennis realizes he is about to spend nearly all of his savings. In the end, he succeeds. Now he has a new companion. He takes her to get cleaned up, doing everything he can to help her. The difference in her appearance is noticeable, but the emptiness in the young woman's eyes remains. Later, as they walk together, Dennis asks her to stay close, or she might get lost. It doesn't take long before she really falls behind. A carriage almost runs her over. She bumps into several people and suddenly finds herself face to face with someone who awakens dark memories. She freezes, trapped in her own thoughts. Fortunately, Dennis finds her. He apologizes for having walked so fast. Now he promises to remain at her side. Dennis, still a little uneasy, answers honestly that it was only because he remembered something from a very long time ago, nothing more. He wants to know her name, or at least how he should address her for now. Her answer surprises him. She says he may call her slave if he wishes. Dennis, however, cannot accept that under any circumstance, so she suggests that he call her Atelier. With that, he introduces himself as Dennis. She asks what he expects her to do, and he thinks that, for now, nothing. He says she may use the second floor however she wants, and if she decides to leave, she may do that as well. The choice is hers. Yes, she is completely free now. That leaves her speechless, and it's clear that besides being surprised, she is also very hungry. Dennis realizes this is the perfect chance to show a bit of what he knows, so he decides to prepare something with eggs. The most curious part is seeing how he mixes magic into the cooking process, and it truly speeds things up. It's obvious Dennis knows what he's doing, because even while preparing it, the aroma is so good that Atelier feels as if she is in paradise. She probably even dozed off for a moment, but after a while, he lets her know the meal is ready and that she may eat freely. The moment she tastes the first bite, the effect is immediate. The flavor surprises her so much that she begins eating quickly, amazed. And who wouldn't understand that? A well-made plate of fried rice can be irresistible. What no one expected was seeing her burst into tears. Dennis, unable to understand what lies behind those tears, chooses to respect her silence. If she doesn't want to explain, he won't force her. Even believing she went through something terrible, and even thinking that perhaps everything is already lost for her, Dennis still believes a good meal can make a difference. And seeing her enjoy every bite, even while crying, makes him feel glad. At one point, he asks how she is feeling. She chokes up, surprised that he used her name. It catches her completely off guard. Later, he praises how she arranged the table, saying she did an excellent job. He adds that he bought that item to make her look even more beautiful. As time passes, we see how Atelier becomes part of Dennis's daily routine. She helps in the kitchen, takes care of the shop, does the errands. She becomes involved in everything, until all the preparations are finally complete. Dennis gets so excited that he gives Atelier a light punch on the arm, and she, even a little shy because of his clumsiness, returns the gesture. It's clear how much the two of them have grown since the beginning. The next morning, Dennis's restaurant will officially open. The name? Adventurer's Restaurant. A great name, without a doubt. Dennis tells the girl she'll be the face of the business and that she will have to dedicate herself. She accepts the challenge without hesitation. Everything is ready. Organized menus, water served, clean tables, ingredients separated. Now, only the next step remains: receiving the first customer. Dennis is so confident that he believes this first visitor will love the seasoning and will end up eating there 3 times a day. And of course, he hopes for that. After all, he needs to recover his investments, and he is taking the business very seriously. And then, it doesn't take long. The first customer appears. A man with a striking appearance who will certainly be remembered as the very first of all. A worthy debut. And so, we reach the end of the first episode. While offering his welcome, he realized he was facing someone wearing armor and didn't really know how to greet someone dressed like that. He remembered that he had picked up a book about how to open a restaurant, a manual made for former adventurers. Among the customers, some didn't want to be bothered. They only wanted to eat and stay quiet. It was important to respect their privacy and make their time in the restaurant as pleasant as possible. The man simply asked him to sit wherever he wanted and asked his employee to bring some water. As soon as he sat down and began reading the menu, Dennis kept watching the girl the whole time. For him, there was no doubt about what to prepare. Dennis knew exactly what to do. For his first customer, this needed to be celebrated. Dennis, however, couldn't understand exactly what the girl wanted, since she wasn't saying a single word. But he soon noticed she didn't have much money to pay for the meal. He then decided to prepare a katsudon. When he made this decision, the girl began shouting, saying she didn't have enough money to pay. Even so, Dennis decided that she would eat for free since she was his first customer. He still found it curious. He thought he was serving a man, but discovered it was a woman. While he started preparing the dish, she explained that she had been expelled from her group for being a woman. According to her, they believed women were not suited to be swordsmen. Dennis believed she did not need to worry about that. Sooner or later, she would find a new group. For him, in that line of work, there was no difference between men and women. The girl knew she didn't have a very high level yet, but at least she was at level 23. Dennis knew that was already more than enough to be considered qualified. She was happy to know that the vice captain of the Silver Wing was a female swordswoman. That inspired her to keep fighting for her place, the Crimson Swift Sword. In every battle, she always attacked first and landed a critical blow. She was considered a true legend among swordsmen. Dennis knew this warrior well and also understood that the girl standing before him was quite dangerous herself. During all that time, the girl tried to hide that she was a woman so she could join some group, but there was no group where she could remain silent the whole time. Dennis also thought it was impossible for anyone to stay quiet in a group for too long. She started crying because she was running out of money and didn't know how to deal with all the pressure. Dennis asked her not to cry and to look at the dish he had prepared. The girl's eyes sparkled. Even so, she said she had no way to pay. Dennis responded silently that he didn't care about that. He only wanted her to eat. When she tasted the meal, she was enchanted by the flavor and began eating as if it were the last meal of her life. After finishing it, she said the food was wonderful. Dennis felt happy and hoped she would become a frequent customer at his restaurant. But she became sad because she would only be able to return once she found a group that accepted a female swordswoman. Dennis decided to help her by asking his customers if any of them were looking for someone with her skills. He didn't really make a habit of helping others, but this time he genuinely wanted to help. The problem was not knowing how to stay in contact with her, so he hoped she would keep eating there until she found a new group. Over time, the restaurant began to fill up, and many adventurers found Dennis's food incredible. It was so good it made them want to cry. The girl who served was adorable, and the food was truly wonderful. Dennis praised Aetlier, saying she was doing great. When he remembered the girl's situation, his heart tightened. Everyone tried to talk to her, but she became embarrassed and always ended up running off. When Dennis saw a group of adventurers, he asked if they were looking for a new member. He then discovered there was a female swordswoman in the group. She had the necessary skills and was quite entertaining. Everyone thought the idea was excellent because the group didn't have enough attack power, and that was a serious problem. At dusk, the girl returned to the restaurant and was extremely happy to learn that Dennis had found a group for her. She promised she would show her gratitude as soon as she received her first payment. Even so, Dennis became a bit tense and she noticed it. He asked if she didn't think she was accepting everything too quickly without thinking, but she didn't care about that. While Dennis remained worried, he knew he could not interfere because the final decision was hers. After eating, she noticed the food was still wonderful as always. She knew she would need to earn a lot of money to pay for everything Dennis was doing for her. The days went by, and Dennis managed to win over more and more customers. Everyone who showed up left satisfied. At the end of a day, two girls appeared and started eating. They thought the food was wonderful. Dennis asked Aetlier to close the shop curtain, since those would be the last customer of the day. However, the conversation between the two girls sounded suspicious. They talked about a group of adventurers who invited women to join them, but then did terrible things to them deep inside the dungeons. One of them asked if those men were never arrested, but they took the women so far that they couldn't return on their own. After doing horrible things, they abandoned them and moved on to another city. The girls knew they needed to be careful with people like that. Dennis remembered the group that had passed through his restaurant and hoped it wasn't the same one. The next day, Henrietta introduced herself to the group. They welcomed her warmly. While they walked through the forest, she asked what they would do that day. The leader answered that it would be a simple gathering mission. They would go to the dungeon, collect some items, and that was it. She felt a little uneasy, wanting to know exactly what they would collect, but she chose not to ask and followed the plan. Upon reaching the bottom of the dungeon, she defeated all the monsters with extreme ease. The group began praising her. They wanted to go even deeper and defeat even more dangerous monsters. She was very happy because she had never been treated with so much respect. For being a woman, she had always been treated as someone without value, but with these people, she believed everything could work out. Even so, the members of the group seemed a little strange. When they went further down, a monster appeared and defeated all of them easily. They only watched while Henrietta fought alone. She asked how far they would go because she was already tired. They told her to relax, that they were almost at their destination. After walking for some more time, they found what they were looking for. It was exactly what they wanted to collect. Suddenly, Henrietta fainted and collapsed in the middle of the dungeon. One of them approached and shocked her. They started laughing, saying she had been very useful, but was an idiot. According to them, all they needed to do was praise her a bit, and she already got excited. She was nothing but a fool. They believed swordswomen were perfect because they were impulsive and easy to deceive. She knew she couldn't remain in that situation for long. They said they would have some fun with her and then release her. At that moment, she remembered what Dennis had told her. If she had been alert from the beginning, that would not have happened. When they began removing her clothes, she screamed for help. But they were so deep inside the dungeon that no one could save her. Suddenly, they heard a strange noise. One of them asked what it could be. In that instant, the leader of the group was struck and thrown far away. Dennis appeared wearing a bread bag over his head. The men became confused, not knowing what kind of monster they were facing. They thought it might be the cook from the restaurant where they had eaten the day before. They tried to attack him, but nothing worked. Dennis was extremely strong, at a level far above all of them. Charging forward, he knocked them out effortlessly. When they tried running, he eliminated all of them, as if they were nothing. Lying on the ground, she asked who that person was. She believed it had to be Dennis protecting her. At nightfall, she showed up to speak with Dennis. She explained everything that had happened, and she said that when she woke up, she was lying in the guild. The person who helped her was a muscular man holding knives. Besides that, the men who attacked her had all been tied up and taken to jail. When the guild investigated, they discovered it was a criminal group of wanted men. She found the whole thing strange and thought it might be a nightmare, but she knew it had been real. That only proved she needed to be more careful when choosing group members. Dennis thought the blame was partly his as well. He believed he should have done some research on them, but she said that was not true. All Dennis did was find a group that might accept her. Suddenly, the girl's stomach growled with hunger. Dennis asked what she wanted to eat. Even without money, he insisted that she choose. When ordering, she noticed it was a very expensive dish. He doesn't care and goes to prepare it so the girl can eat. Dennis was about to close the restaurant, but suddenly 2 more girls show up, and he decides to close later. The 2 girls ask why Dennis didn't open earlier. He explains that he was busy. When she sees him from behind, Henrietta realizes he was the one who saved her. However, more people end up arriving and she can't say anything. The next day, Henrietta is at the restaurant again, trying to talk about the man who saved her. But Dennis doesn't care at all and asks what she wants to eat that day. After she mentions another expensive dish, Dennis decides to prepare it. He would like to know why she wants so badly to hide her gender in order to join a group. Even so, he thinks the girl should do things the way she wants, because in the end, Henrietta needs to be herself. Right after that, the ramen is ready and the girl starts drooling from hunger. But Dennis's words still echo. Henrietta needs to be who she truly is, so she runs to the back of the shop. She starts removing all her armor to show everyone that she is actually a girl. In her mind, when people make mistakes, they end up becoming afraid of making them again, and sometimes lose sight of who they really are. But instead of continuing to hide, she is sure that she only needs to be who she is. Aetlier praises her, saying she looks very beautiful, and Henrietta becomes happy with those encouraging words. When she tries the food, she thinks it tastes amazing. But what truly moved her were Dennis's words. However, he warns that she needs to find a job soon to pay the bill that is piling up. Henrietta becomes nervous when she learns Dennis is writing everything down. When she least expects it, a girl enters the restaurant. Dennis welcomes her, but she ignores him and picks up the menu to take a look. The girl wants to know what the most delicious dish in the restaurant is. For Dennis, everything is very delicious, but she thinks that kind of answer is useless. He recommends some rice, but the girl is not in the mood to eat that. Henrietta suggests pasta, but the girl says it is too heavy. Everything they recommend, the girl criticizes. Dennis wants to go after her, but he is stopped by Henrietta, who asks him to calm down. In the end, young people go through naive phases like that. Aetlier appears discreetly and recommends fried rice. Embarrassed, the girl decides to eat the dish he recommended. Everyone gets excited, and Dennis runs to prepare the food. When she sees the finished dish, the girl is impressed by the appearance. When she tastes it, she thinks it is wonderful. Dennis asks if something bad happened. Embarrassed, the girl doesn't understand what he is talking about. He noticed she seemed breathless, as if she wanted to vent, but she says there is nothing special, she just showed up to eat. Dennis understands if she doesn't want to talk, but she interrupts him and starts speaking. She says the people around her have a very low level. Everyone becomes disappointed, thinking it was something serious. She asks if they want to know what she is talking about. Even with everyone saying no, she continues explaining that their mindsets are very shallow. Since the girl was way too excited, no one knows what to do, so they let her keep talking. To her, everyone has a peanut-sized brain. The people she found to form a group had no ambition to become an elite team. Dennis asks if she is hearing what she is saying about ambition. Henrietta comments that Dennis can be somewhat rude when he wants to. The girl starts shouting, desperate, saying she hates people without ambition. A group of unmotivated idiots who only pretend to be adventurers is something unforgivable. Soon, she gets even more excited and starts a speech. Adventurers need to explore unknown lands, but most of them just do the basic quest, and that's it. When she said that, she was kicked out of the group without even saying goodbye. Dennis asks Henrietta why only crazy people show up at the restaurant. She says she doesn't know. The girl continues saying she always asks to leave groups with that kind of shallow mentality. After all, she is certain that one day she will reach the top of the adventurers. She will join the Silver Wing and become the person who will be the greatest mage. Dennis only asks that she doesn't push herself too much and end up alone. In the end, adventurers are adventurers because of their groups. With an arrogant tone, she says she doesn't even know if a group capable of keeping up with her fantasy will ever exist. As she stands up, she says she doesn't need change, even though she paid the exact price of the dish. Before leaving, she introduces herself as Vivia Strange, and says that next time she wants fried rice with shrimp again. Dennis doesn't understand why only crazy people show up in his restaurant. Later, Vivia appears again, telling her stories and ordering the same dish. This time, she says she decided to join the strongest group in the city, the Night Mist Troop. Dennis congratulates her and wishes her success. Vivia thinks she is the most popular person in the world, compared to Mr. Best. Dennis asks if her levels match all that talk, but for her, levels come later. She says she has many advanced techniques, and that is why she is so popular. Now she just needs to put everything into practice. Dennis notices she is very young and full of energy, but according to her, the group chose her because of her future potential. Dennis simply agrees with everything, hoping she will stop talking soon. The girl believes she is one step away from joining the strongest group. When she eats the food, she says it tastes even better, and asks if when she enters the Silver Wing, she will get a cool nickname, maybe something like Dark Mage. Meanwhile, Dennis received the nickname Legendary Fried Rice, which annoys him every time he hears it. In his mind, he thinks it is nice that the girl always wants the best. If she finds a stable group that trains her the right way, maybe one day she will become a reliable adventurer. When he asks what her first task will be, she answers that it will be tomorrow. Curious, Dennis wants to know what it is. Vivia says it is gathering rare synthesis materials. Dennis is startled and decides to check her level. Level 17. A bit high for her age, but for the 5th floor, the ideal is above level 30. It is not a place where you take adventurers at her level. Dennis asks if that isn't too far. The girl is surprised that he knows the floor is deep, but assures him everything will be fine. The elite members will give her all the support she needs. Dennis remembers she said she had many advanced techniques, but suspects she only read about them in books, and thinks she knows how to use them. A person's level shows the quantity and quality of the abilities they acquired. Basic statistics rise with every level because abilities become more precise and almost always active. If Vivia truly acquired many advanced techniques, it is strange that her level did not increase in the same proportion. Returning to the girl, she says people only see in her what they expect, and she still thinks Dennis has never entered a dungeon in his life. It is a world only adventurers understand. Dennis does not want to tell her he was once one, and simply agrees. But the last time he entered was on the 37th floor. Back to Vivia, she is certain everything will go well. After all, she is with a high-level group. Later, Dennis remains worried, because he knows the girl must have already gone into the 5th floor by now. But he wonders if he should have stopped her. Although the rule for adventurers is that you cannot stop people. Aetlier is worried about Vivia. Suddenly, some adventurers appear hoping that Vivia is okay, saying that making her descend to the 5th floor is already cruelty. The group's leader is extremely harsh, and before they notice, Dennis drags them into an alley. They get irritated and introduce themselves as members of the Night Mist Troop. Going after Dennis, he defeats them with extreme ease. When leaving the alley, Dennis decides he will close the place to see if Vivia is alright. Aetlier wants him to be careful, and the two touch hands like father and daughter. The scene shifts to Vivia, who is running from several goblins and screaming for them to stay away. Going back a little into the past, the members asked Vivia to face the monsters of the 5th floor alone. It was a test so she could join the group. Returning to the present, she continues running and needs to go back as fast as possible to the 3rd floor. When she least expects it, her foot gets tied by a strange vine. Desperate and not knowing what to do, she notices that she has magic. Trying to remember the type of spell she had seen in the book, her mind goes completely blank. She rewrote every spell on paper over and over again. She thought she had memorized everything, but she was wrong. She knows that if she stays trapped, the goblins will find her. When she least expects it, someone teaches her the magical steps of the spell, and she manages to hide. The goblins soon run past, and she thanks the person for saving her. Vivia is impressed that she can use that kind of ancient magic, and did not know that place to hide existed. The girl explains that it is still too early to feel safe. They still need to find a way to escape that place. Vivia introduces herself and wants to know the girl's name, who introduces herself as Cynthia. She asks why Cynthia is there. Cynthia explains that she was left behind by her group. When they were running from the monsters, she fell into a trap, but no one came to save her, and everyone abandoned her and fled. Vivia feels sad for the girl, but she knows that no matter what she did, she was never good at the basics of magic. She always caused many problems for her group. She apologizes for talking so much. Cynthia thinks it is better to wait for Vivia's group so they can be rescued. Vivia explains that the same thing happened to her and that no one will come to rescue them. She thinks she must have been too presumptuous. No matter which group she joins, she always causes arguments and discord among the members. She believes she has a terrible personality. The girl does not believe that is true. Vivia reminds her that she knows nothing about her life, and Cynthia answers the same. Vivia notices she is right. She is impressed that all this time she had never spoken that way with anyone. It makes her feel a little better. Vivia decides she will be the bait so Cynthia can escape. She knows that if she had not been saved, she would not be alive at that moment, so she owes everything to her. It is the first time she feels motivated to do something. Now that she thinks this way, she realizes she has always lived selfishly. She looked at everyone around her with disdain, always believing she was different from everyone else. But now, that girl saved her life. She was comforted by her. Now she believes that at the very least, she must leave that place alive. She wishes that from the bottom of her heart. Vivia decides she will distract the monsters so Cynthia can escape. Running out of the area, she draws the goblins' attention. Vivia uses her spell that has no effect at all. Right before being eliminated, Dennis appears using his stone magic. Vivia begins to think he is a monster and tries to use her abilities. However, Dennis introduces himself and hits her on the head. Grabbing her hand, he wants to leave as quickly as possible, but she says there is another person trapped. When entering the hole where they were, Dennis finds only a skeleton and asks if that is the person. Shocked, they both search for more information, and at the Adventurers Guild, they discover that Cynthia disappeared 13 years ago. She was separated from her group on the 5th floor. After that, she was never found again, and everyone believes she died on that floor. They both go to the cemetery so they can say goodbye to the girl. Dennis asks Vivia if she has ever heard the legend that when adventurers die, they help other adventurers. Crying, Vivia says she will come back to visit her. She promises she will become the #1 mage in the world. Leaving the cemetery, Dennis invites Vivia to eat something somewhere. She accepts. Dennis asks her not to stay sad, and he immediately feels the girl's magic again. And we are told that in ancient times, if people experienced something mysterious things that could not be explained, anything that confessed their hearts began to be called magic. If that is true, she was someone who used magic, a mage, and the girl says goodbye to Vivia. At the end of the episode, a girl appears on top of a clock, trying to understand how things reached that point. However, on the other hand, we see this girl asking herself why everything had to end that way. Her name is Bakal. This man asked her how long it would take to correct some reports because it was taking too long. She apologized, but the man, extremely irritated, asks if apologizing is the only thing she knows how to do. Of course, the abuse she is suffering is excessive, but she has no choice but to continue with her life. Now she is trying to balance some accounts perfectly, but no matter how much she tries, she cannot do it. To make things worse, she has to stay awake until very late, even having to remain awake until 3 in the morning for a task scheduled for the morning. Bakal feels awful because she has not even eaten. She decides to go to the restaurant that had just opened, but when she arrives, she sees it is closing. She feels terrible for having such bad luck, but Aetlier sees her, asks if she is a customer, and then the little girl tells the protagonist that someone arrived and needs to be served. Since Dennis has no choice, he asks Bakal to choose what she wants to eat. She decides to order the dish of the day. She notices the atmosphere in the place is incredibly pleasant. She assumes the two of them are regular customers, but she could never do something like that because she spends her days off sleeping and does not have friends to visit. The food is finally ready, and Bakal is surprised because she had never seen anything so beautiful before. When she tastes it, she is enchanted, because it is something inexplicable for her palate. Henrietta tells her that everything they cook there is incredible, and that she recommends the Vitra Katsudon, the sorcerer's ramen, and other options. The woman leaves. Vivia is surprised that she knows so much about food, but the blonde explains she is the first customer, and the one who has been there for the longest time. However, Dennis says she is actually the first to eat for free because she always leaves everything on the tab and then leaves without paying. Henrietta comments that Vivia also does not have a job, but the protagonist states that yes, he pays for everything she eats. Bacall, with all the confusion she sees, cannot help but smile, but she is about to start crying without noticing it. She immediately apologizes, but on the inside, she thinks that place feels like refined food, a pleasant environment, and very good people. However, in her daily life, she suffers from anger, abuse, and extremely offensive comments. She has to work intensely until dawn almost every day. It turns out her villagers had so much faith in her because she could use magic from a very young age, that they gathered money so she could go on adventures and become an extraordinary mage. In reality, some time later, she managed to get a job in that place, which was a great way to earn money and repay the people from her village. However, she is now away from the food sector and seems to have returned to her sad reality. Henrietta wonders if she is alright. The protagonist asks Vivia if she knows the girl, but he answers that he does not. Henrietta asks the protagonist if he could do something for her, but Dennis reminds them that he is only a cook. She will have to handle her own issues. Returning to Bacall, her alarm rang in the middle of the night, but she could not sleep or get up. Unfortunately, afterward, she fell asleep and now she must hurry, because she arrived extremely late for work and ended up being scolded for it. Once inside a dungeon, her partner is attacked by a monster, but she uses a wind blast to save him. Even asking if he is alright, the man pushes her away in a contemptuous manner. On the way back to the city, she walks in deep sadness, thinking about how the men place all responsibility on her, because according to them, she enjoys embarrassing people. Very close by, the two walk while discussing the protagonist's menu options. They have just seen Bacall and cannot keep themselves from worrying about her. Vivia knows this seems very serious, so Henrietta dives to catch her in the air, and Vivia uses her palm spell to soften the fall. They immediately bring her to the protagonist, who thinks Bacall might be suffering from some type of heart problem, although I assume he is referring to something emotional. The girls ask if there is a way to heal her, and Dennis believes that good rest might help, at least for now. Vivia reminds him that she is in a night haze, and those men are a serious matter. Dennis promises that he will speak with them. Indeed, during the night, the men go to the restaurant. The leader, named Hopper, apologizes to Dennis because he heard one of his men is causing trouble. But it is the protagonist who apologizes since he already attacked some of them. Hopper heard they serve excellent food there, and the protagonist notices that this man is not lowering his guard and that he is level 51, far above what a simple adventurer would need. Hopper wants to talk about Bacall, but Dennis explains she is not in condition to work right now. The ideal would be that she receive treatment to improve her health, but Hopper states that this is impossible. He prefers that they hand her over and let them handle the situation. They actually hand him the contract for the protagonist to read, and Dennis cannot believe that the girl signed such a terrible contract. The protagonist says that such a large amount of work is not fair for a single person. Hopper explains that this is how their group functions. But the protagonist comments that an adventurer can join or leave a group whenever they want, and Hopper again says that this is not his decision. Dennis loses patience because he cannot allow them to continue exploiting Bacall like that. He concludes that these men are heartless frauds, not adventurers. Hopper warns him, saying they are the law, since this is their territory. If he keeps interfering with Bacall, he will deeply regret it, and he states this is his final warning. There, Bacall does not understand why she was saved. If she were better, she would be better. Tyre says that she understands her. She also went through something similar in the past. She tells her that everything was taken from her, and afterwards she was exiled. Besides that, she was sold as a slave, and since then her will to live disappeared completely. However, everything changed when someone appeared in her life, and now she is very happy to keep living. She advises her to eat something delicious first and then make a decision. Since she has gone through something similar, she will understand any decision Bacall makes. However, she advises her to live, because in the end, life has its positive aspects, even when it does not seem so. Back to Dennis, he asks the bandit if he considers himself the king or something similar. Hopper simply answers that if they rule the city because they are the strongest group, there is a reason. In fact, he believes that the Largent is a clear example of that. Dennis tells him that they are nothing like them, but Hopper does not care. Of course, he keeps in mind that the clients of the Argentia are nobles and aristocrats, so it is natural for them to be at different levels, but in theory, everyone is equal. Hopper thinks this place is very small and would burn easily with fire. Things are becoming more intense than they should be. The protagonist is completely exhausting his patience, but Katie herself arrives, surprised by the incredibly welcoming atmosphere of the protagonist's restaurant. Dennis asks her to excuse him, but he is having an important conversation at the moment. Katie answers that no, she is not crazy. She came from the capital and does not intend to wait. She wants to eat immediately. Hopper wonders who she is until he recognizes her crimson armor. Yes, armor, of course. He also recognizes the 2 red swords and the hair that practically looks like it is on fire. Yes, just by looking at the embroidery on her back, he can tell she is the vice captain of the Argentia. He questions what her relationship is with the protege and why they talk with such familiarity. Dennis asks Katie to wait for a moment. He requests that Hopper release Bokkel from the group, but the redhead wants the cloth as if it were a new toy, because she thinks it is extremely cute. Vivia asks Katie what her relationship with Dennis is, and the redhead gets irritated at the fact she does not know. The main character never told them anything about that. Although he tries to stop her from saying anything, she shouts that the main character was a member of the Argentia and her former partner. Everyone is in absolute shock, and the most worried for obvious reasons is Hopper, because he does not want to make enemies with someone of that position. After reflecting for a moment, he orders one of his men to burn the contract. He then decides to leave, but Katie is disappointed because she wanted some action, since she does not like people invading what she considers her hideout. The main character explains that the hideout does not belong to her, but since they have not seen her for some time, he asks what she wants to eat. The 2 remain in shock, but Atelier also asks him to prepare Bokkel's special dish of the day. As soon as the food is ready, Katie wastes no time and begins to enjoy it, while Bokkel stares at her. Of course, this time everything ended, and the night came to a peaceful end. The scene shifts to the girl, who is heading to the clan base, her mood growing worse and worse. Lately, the missions have not gone very well. Walking distractedly, she ends up bumping into Vigo, the group's captain. He is very irritated and asks everyone what they are doing standing there, only watching. They answer that they are going to make preparations for the new mission. Then, Vigo orders them to hurry. He remembers that the girl had gone to see Dennis. She comments that news truly travels fast. When he asks what she went to Dennis's restaurant for, she explains she simply wanted to eat the food he prepares again. We are then taken to the past, where she once more enjoys Dennis's wonderful cooking. She wishes he would return to the Silver Wing as soon as possible. The boy does not understand the reason for that, especially now. She explains that without Dennis, the Silver Wing is on the verge of collapsing. Dennis does not intend to return, but the girl insists. He was the axis of the rearguard, and since his departure, the members most affected by his absence are in conflict with Vigo. Dennis enjoys his life as a cook. Of course, his regular customers have a few loose screws, but he appreciates having a restaurant. At this point, he has no plans to return to the stressful and tense group. The girl wonders if even if she asks, he still will not return. Dennis replies that he will not. In the end, he is not an adventurer but a cook. The scene returns to the girl, who tries to convince Vigo to bring Dennis back. But the leader has no intention of doing so. He only wants her not to get involved with Dennis anymore. The girl wonders how everything fell out of control, since everything was fine before Dennis left. But the man does not want to talk, and he asks her not to touch that subject again. The scene shifts to the restaurant, which is always full. Now, Bokkel works with Dennis. Even after being told not to overwork herself after what happened, she cannot remain still or calm unless she is working. Besides that, her small veteran is there with her. While serving their usual customers, Dennis complains about the fact that Henrietta is only a freeloader. Everyone is shocked to learn that the girl still has not paid her debt. She says she has not been able to find a stable job, but she will pay everything as soon as she gets one. Dennis asks her to settle that as soon as possible. The customers ask if the restaurant is managing things well, because there are many regulars now and few staff members. Dennis answers that Atelier is trying very hard to serve all the customers. He ends up dropping one of the pots and says he would like Vivia to come to the restaurant on her next day off, because he needs help. Henrietta also offers herself in case he needs more assistance. However, Dennis states that he does not need her help at the moment. The girl wonders what kind of advice Dennis intends to ask Vivia for. The scene shifts to Henrietta, who is taking a bath. She wishes she could live somewhere with at least hot water. She wishes she could at least visit a public bath, but she has no money for that. She feels she must earn money soon so she can pay the boss. She remembers Dennis' words, calling her a freeloader. In her mind, she believes he only wants advice for Vanilla. The scene changes again. Dennis is talking to Vivia. He does not know what to do because he believes the Atelier is dating someone. Lately, he has started giving her an allowance. Since then, the Atelier has been going out frequently, and when asked, she never says where she is going. Dennis is becoming increasingly irritated. He saw the Atelier walking with a boy. Vivia thinks they may simply be friends, but Dennis cannot get the thought of them dating out of his mind. With no idea what to do, Vivia suggests that he ask the girl directly, since he is so worried. Dennis does not want to speak to her because he believes she will treat him coldly. Vivia never imagined Dennis was so sensitive. Dennis says he wishes the 8-year's boyfriend had come to his home with a box of sweets to formally ask for permission to date her. If the boy is weak or superficial, he will not accept it. He would approve the relationship only if the boy were level 80 or higher. Suddenly, the 8-year appears and asks what they are talking about. Dennis is startled and falls to the floor. Vivia says they were only talking about learning to cook. The 8-year also shows interest in learning how to cook. Dennis decides he will teach them, but asks her to start by washing the dishes. He begins the lesson, and Vivia stays further back, noticing that Dennis is giving far too much attention to the 8-year and ignoring her. Seeing the 8-year so dedicated, Vivia remembers her past and the person who taught her everything she knows today. After both dishes are prepared, Dennis is impressed only by the 8-year's dish, even though Vivia's is actually better. Right after that, the clock rings and the 8-year leaves, without saying where she is going. Bakal appears, and Dennis asks her to eat both bowls of ramen, because he needs to go out with Vivia. Vivia does not want to go, but Dennis insists. He wants to follow them. Suddenly, Henrietta arrives. Dennis asks her to help Bakal with the shopping, and then he runs off immediately. They find the 8-year talking to an elderly woman. And then with the boy Dennis suspects is her boyfriend. Watching them, he notices that they enter a jewelry store, and he thinks they must be about to get married. Even though he thinks it is too soon, he does not want that to happen. Vivia has an idea of what they can do. The scene shifts to Henrietta and Bakal. Bakal wants to know why Henrietta has been so sad. The girl apologizes and says she is thinking of a way to earn money so she can pay Dennis. She fears that if she continues like this, he will hate her. Bakal asks why she is unable to save money, since she is working. Henrietta also does not know. The more she earns, the more she spends, since she is always buying potions and maintaining her weapons. She wishes to find a way to help Dennis. Right after that, they hear people talking about him. They say the captain of the Night Mist troop was defeated by a restaurant owner. Everyone knows he is a former Silver Wing member, but they also hope that no girl from the Night Mist tries anything against Dennis. The scene returns to the two who are listening to the conversation from inside the place. With their ears against the door, they hear suspicious things, and Dennis becomes extremely irritated. Suddenly, an elderly woman is robbed, and Dennis runs after the thief. The criminal believes Dennis will not be able to catch him, since he is only level 30. But when he looks back, he sees Dennis running, without using any magic at all. Dennis asks Vivia if she has a spell that can help him run faster. Using her hand, she casts a spell that allows a jump. Dennis asks her to repeat it, and she does. The thief tries to push Dennis away with magic, but ahead of them Henrietta appears and intercepts him. She jumps and knocks him out with a single blow. She asks if she did everything correctly, and Dennis praises her while patting her head, which makes her extremely happy. When they return to the restaurant, the girls are surprised to see that the 8-year truly is dating someone. Dennis asks why Henrietta is sad, and Bakal explains that she fears being banished. Dennis assures her he would never expel her, since she appreciates the food he cooks so much. Suddenly, the 8-year appears, walking past without saying anything to anyone. When she approaches Dennis, she gives him a gift. She is extremely embarrassed, and Dennis feels awkward for having doubted her. When he opens it, he realizes it matches the color of her eyes, and he becomes very happy. The scene shifts to Vigo, who is speaking with a mysterious person. Right after that, our protagonist feels extremely tired because he cooked all day long. So, he asks 8-year to clean the outside area. Suddenly, a man appears, kneeling at 8-year's feet. Everyone wonders what is happening. He introduces himself as Stevens, the butler. She is part of the Workstat family. Everyone remains confused, but soon realizes that she belongs to a wealthy family. The Workstat household is the greatest mage family in the entire kingdom. Their bloodline stands at the top of every mage in the world. Once he sits down, the man begins crying because he sees the girl serving food in a low-quality restaurant. Dennis becomes stressed, but first wants to understand what is going on. The man explains that he served as the butler in the Workstat residence. His name is Stephen. By request of the Royal Court of Justice, he appeared to retrieve 8-year. The girl's father passed away, and Lord Thomas had a younger brother, Joseph, who stole the inheritance that belonged to 8-year. He used as justification the claim that she did not carry the Workstat blood, expelling her from the family. However, the will left by the girl's father was discovered, and 8-year is the legitimate heir of the Workstat house. The will declares that she must inherit all the family's wealth and power. The royal government formally acknowledged the wishes of 8-year's father, and the Court of Justice agreed to investigate 8-year's legitimacy as heir. He asks the girl to return and defeat Joseph, becoming the next head of the Workstat family. However, none of that matters to her. She does not want to return to that place. Stevens begins to panic and begs her not to remain in such a filthy location. Dennis knows that, in the end, he is only a cook in a small town, while Aetlier is the daughter of a noble house. Some of the things Steven says make sense. When he asks the girl if she truly wants to stay there, she answers yes. Dennis explains that, thinking about her future, he does not believe this is something she should ignore. One day, Aetlier will need to resolve these matters. The girl decides to go, but only if Dennis goes as well. The man chooses to accompany her to help her, and the restaurant will remain in Henrietta's hands, who will probably eat all the food. Aetlier wants to settle everything as soon as possible and does not want to return to the royal capital. If there were a way to resolve all of this without going back, it would be better. Stevens asks them to leave immediately and calls Dennis rabble. The man becomes irritated and almost strikes the old man. When they arrive in the royal capital, Dennis thinks he would never return to that place. However, when he looks to the side, he notices the city's most sophisticated restaurant, whose food is said to be the best of all. He decides to stop by to eat. Soon after, they reach the mansion that belongs to the girl. Upon entering the room meant for blood collection, she becomes very frightened, and when she is pricked, she faints in Dennis's arms. After that, they need to go to another room, and Dennis asks more about the whole situation. Stevens explains that the former head of the family, Lord Thomas, possessed a powerful hypnosis magic. He was capable of using magic tied to mental control. There are certain forms of magic that can only be obtained by specific bloodlines or by individuals with exceptional talent. These are very special cases. One of these forms is hypnosis magic, which affects both the mind and the spirit. The Workstadt house holds this magical lineage. Aetlier's father was a good man who used this power to save many people. However, his younger brother desired his position, and some say he was the one who ordered the couple's death. With that, Aetlier's bloodline legitimacy was questioned, and she was expelled. Everything was taken from her, and the girl became so shaken that she seemed unable to recover. However, Lord Falmouth was wise enough to leave a will. Now that this document has surfaced, the royal government ordered a new investigation regarding Aetlier's lineage. This verification will be carried out using a magical item created for analysis. The girl's blood will be placed inside a magical sphere. After that, the blood of Lord Falmouth, which is under the royal government's protection, will be added. If the sphere takes the shape of a flower, that will serve as proof that both share a first-degree blood relation. Even when using the blood of Lord Falmouth's wife, Lady Alyssa, the result was the same, proving that Aetlier is undoubtedly the daughter of Lord Falmouth and Lady Alyssa. Thus, she wins the case. Right after that, they are taken to the judge. When they arrive in the room, Joseph is already there and starts provoking Dennis for having been expelled from the Silver Wings. The judge begins reading the will left by Aetlier's father, declaring that she is declared his legitimate heir, as well as the rightful successor to the position of head of the family. In addition, all the fortune left behind belongs to her by right. The family's knowledge and books are bequeathed to her younger brother, Lord Joseph. This court was assembled to determine the legitimacy of the will. Joseph's attorney argues that Aetlier Workstadt is indeed the daughter of Lord Falmouth, but the result of a relationship with a mistress of humble origin. To him, that would not be a lineage worthy of inheriting the leadership of a family that stands above every other mage. Right after that, the judge proposes a draw so that the decision will be fair, and the one who draws the stick is Stevens. When the first test is performed, it is confirmed that Aetlier is the Lord's daughter. However, the second test indicates that she is not Lady Alyssa's daughter. In light of this, the judge decides to validate that Aetlier is the Lord's child, but not the lady's, which implies the need to revise the will. This way, she has the right to keep all the family's books, while Joseph keeps all the fortune. Joseph accepts. However, before the judge can bring down the gavel, Dennis notices that Stevens is bleeding and discovers that he altered the lady's blood. Dennis grabs him by the collar and exposes that Lord Joseph promised to restore his position as head butler if he obeyed. The judge orders Dennis to sit immediately, but he is extremely irritated and says he never once drew a marked stick. The entire confusion began with the problematic will. Overcome by anger, he knocks the man out and threatens to attack anyone who tries to stop him. Vivia intervenes, asking him to stop, because otherwise he will be considered a sworn enemy of the kingdom. Dennis steps back and is taken outside. Because of his actions, the evidence becomes invalid, and Aetlier is left only with the books. When she is escorted to the storage area, she ends up entering a room that contains the most important books in the world. They believe the girl's father already knew something like this could happen, and therefore entrusted her with the legitimate inheritance of these books. When they leave to return to the restaurant and store the books, Vivia sees a man who looks very similar to Dennis entering the castle. This man has known Dennis for a long time. Outside, there are many people still wanting to eat the food made by our protagonist Dennis. Meanwhile, Vivia and Dr. Kalati are savoring Dennis's cooking. All the customers showing up are mages and sages. Vivia has heard rumors about the magic books Aetlier inherited. Everyone is impressed by the fact that magical secrets are stored inside the books. The mages are learning a lot thanks to these books given by Aetlier. Dennis shouts for everyone to leave as soon as they finish eating, since this is a restaurant and not a library. Suddenly, a man stands up and apologizes for disturbing them, but thanks to the book he holds, he can now cure his wife's illness. The boy is extremely grateful to Aetlier because now he can attempt to heal his wife's disease. Of course, everyone wants to borrow books, but Dennis made an exception. Right after that, even more customers begin to arrive, and Dennis becomes even more excited to cook for everyone, activating his skills to cook faster. Aetlier is impressed by the focus Dennis is showing. We are told a bit more about Dennis's past. He would eat garbage to survive, and he always stood under the rain because he had nowhere else to go. His eyes looked lifeless, and the cold nights always left him sick. When he looked to the side, a woman dropped her wallet, and Dennis ran after her to return it. The woman said it was her wallet and that she would take it back. Dennis thought she would have problems if she did not have it with him. Right after that, she brought him to her restaurant so he could eat something. When Dennis tasted the woman's food, he became happier and began devouring it. We are taken back to the present time of the anime. Dennis ended up getting a strong cold, and all the girls appear worried because he looks exhausted. He collapses, and even so, Dennis wants to work. But the girls stop him and want him to rest a bit more. Dennis tries to stand so he can work, but the girls stop him since they close the shop. When he looks to the side, he realizes that Aetlier is on the verge of tears. The girls explain that she was extremely worried about him. The girl spent all her time imagining countless terrible things. Dennis asks her to calm down, saying it is nothing serious, just a cold. Within just a few seconds, while he was sleeping, the doctor examined him and said that it is probably just a simple cold, but believes all of this is connected to exhaustion from overworking. Ever since he returned from the capital, he did not take any rest and has been extremely busy all the time. The next time he wakes up, they will give him medicine so he can recover. All of them leave, and only Aetlier remains. The girls are impressed by the fact that she truly loves Dennis. When she leaves the room, they all start thinking of a way to help Dennis. One of them suggests making rice porridge. They need to hurry so they can prepare it as soon as possible, so that he can get better. Suddenly, the girl returns wearing armor so she can cook. They have no idea what they are going to make for him to eat. Henrietta returns with meat. Vivia asks if that is the only thing she knows how to eat, because they need something lighter for him. The two of them start arguing because Henrietta nearly cuts the table. Suddenly, Sestovich appears and asks what is happening. Sina returns to Aetlier, who is checking his temperature and notices that he is truly burning hot. Deep down, she thinks it is her fault that he is like this. She wants him to recover as soon as possible so they can cook together again. Sina returns once more to the past, when the boy became extremely mischievous and wanted to cook all the time. Right after that, he runs out of the place so he will not get scolded. The chef appears and asks what is going on. The man says Dennis spends all his time causing trouble. He cut the cabbage completely wrong and turned it into powder. The man asks her to scold the boy, because ever since she adopted him, he has been making this kind of mess constantly. The man says it is her fault for spoiling Dennis too much. The girl asks him to calm down, because Dennis will certainly understand, and will not make as much of a mess as he does now. When they arrive at the restaurant, Dennis manages to cook good food, and is sure that this time someone will like it. But a dense smoke is rising from it. When he offers it to the woman, she hesitates, but after tasting it, she notices it is terrible. The chef arrives and uses a spell to make it better. After tasting it, she realizes it is wonderful. The woman says that her apprentice chef forgot to add an essential ingredient. Dennis feels upset for putting his master in a difficult situation. The woman asks if he now understands that he needs to use his skills correctly. Dennis replies that he does, saying it is all right. He starts crying because he believed he had made good fried rice. She only asks him to study a bit more and listen to people. And Dennis promises he will start listening more. Dennis wants to know how she did that. She used the combination skill to fix the rice. She says this is nothing more than a child's trick, because her nickname is Legendary Fried Rice. Dennis asks if he can do that as well, and she replies that he can. The scene returns to the restaurant, and they ask why Sextovit is there. He does not hide it and says he is obsessed with magic. Among the volumes Aetlier inherited, there is one he is desperate to read, and that is why he came. But this situation means Dennis's meal is a priority before a grimoire. He wants to know what they will make for him. The man thinks it would be best if everyone cooks rice. Once there is a perfectly cooked batch of rice, that is when the creation of rice porridge truly begins. What they should be discussing at this moment is the best way to cook delicious rice using magic. Everyone is talking in a way that leaves Henrietta completely aside, and she becomes isolated from the conversation. Henrietta takes advantage of the fact that they are distracted and sits down to drink some tea. They will use ghost fire and magical flames to cook the rice. The variation in heat caused by the dual spell will be solved using a pot with magical catalyst that stabilize the conduction of heat. He is certain this is the best way to cook the most delicious rice using magic, but he would like to know how they will turn the rice into porridge. Suddenly, Polvo appears in the area, offering a 50% discount so they can make rice. Additionally, there is a mode available to prepare porridge. Suddenly, Aetlier appears, saying Dennis has improved a lot, and she thinks he will be able to eat the porridge. At nightfall, Aetlier brings Dennis the porridge with egg so he can recover as fast as possible. He finds it wonderful and remembers his master. Aetlier made the eggs, but it was Polvo who made the porridge. The man becomes irritated and asks why Polvo made the porridge. The scene changes to Henrietta, who is walking around the city together with Vivia. People become curious because both of them are not at Dennis's restaurant. They answer that the adventurer's restaurant is closed due to business reasons. For them, today is a very special day. The scene changes to Dennis, who is completely ready to leave. But Aetlier is still wearing her apron, and Dennis asks her to remove it because she will not need it where they are going. Even though she does not need it, she prefers not to take it off and continues wearing it. After a while, Henrietta and Vivia show up so everyone can leave together. Before going, Henrietta thinks it's better to check everything first. The scene shifts to all of them inside a hot spring, and Vivia is impressed by Dennis's muscles. The man thinks that this is the minimum a man should have. But before he gets that excited, Dennis asks why Vivia is that skinny. The boy answers that he is a mage, so it is completely fine to look that way. He does not need muscles to go to the front line. In fact, it is a mystery how someone like Dennis has so many muscles. Our protagonist tells him to do 1,000 handstand push-ups every day, so he can build more muscles. Vivia always said Dennis was not human, and now he is absolutely sure about it. Dennis asks why he is still wearing a towel, since they are the only men there. Vivia preferred to stay with the towel, but the man starts getting irritated and wants him to remove it. After some time, they all meet outside to eat a lot. While the adults stay with beer, the children get soda. Then Dennis asks Henrietta to give the first speech. She asks if it really has to be her. When she starts talking, the girl is extremely tense, and Dennis tells her to relax a little before she starts saying nonsense. Then she begins speaking properly. Henrietta thanks everyone for the help, and after some time, she finally managed to find a job that pays well. She will not join any adventurer group, but instead the Royal Knight's Order. She hesitated a lot during this time, but she wanted a job where she could help people. Vivia also managed to find a new group. It is not one of the biggest or the best, but it is a step toward becoming a strong mage. Everyone wishes him good luck, and they also stopped being a NEET. To finish, now it is Bachel's turn. She decided to return to her parents' home. She will stay there for a while, and later become a teacher at the Magic Academy in the royal capital. Dennis says she mentioned she was invited before graduating. Everyone likes the girl because she is a very talented person. But anyway, they will celebrate the new paths each one is taking. They will eat a lot and celebrate a lot. After some time, they all drank a lot and ate a lot of meat. Vivia and Dennis noticed that Aetlier and Bacel became really close friends. After spending time talking to each other, Vivia realizes that everyone is going away and feels like life will be a little sad without everyone around. Henrietta asks if she should delay her job a bit, and Bacel also considers delaying her trip. Dennis asks her to stay quiet. They will finally request to do something they wanted. Vivia realizes Dennis is right. Henrietta decides she will leave the city tomorrow. After some time, they decide to eat a bit more, and Dennis makes the dish he is used to preparing, rice. When they least expected, Polvo shows up, who could not resist the impressive aroma of the food and had to appear to eat. He had never eaten fried rice as delicious as that. Dennis remembers he is the shady merchant of random goods who is always deceiving people. He answers that it is indeed him and notices Dennis is already much better. Dennis wants to know the man's name, but he ends up fainting immediately because Dennis still does not know his name even now. Aetlier says the man's name is Polvo. Since she remembers his name, he asks if Aetlier wants to work in his shop. But before he finishes speaking, Dennis punches the man on the head and tells him not to invite his advertisement girls. He will forgive him only this time because he helped the other day. Thanks to him, Dennis ate an amazing rice porridge with egg. He is also considering creating a new dish for the menu using the machine. Polvo thanks him because Dennis liked his feedback. Dennis asks why a sly merchant like him wants this place. Polvo asks him not to call him sly in front of Aetlier. He heard Dennis was on the spot preparing a barbecue to offer a feast. He brought a huge piece of premium meat. Dennis decides to take advantage of the generosity and accept. When he throws it up high, Dennis begins slicing the meat with extreme ease. And everyone is very impressed. Everyone thinks it is delicious and begins eating that wonderful meat. Polvo wanted to offer a piece of meat to Aetlier, but she is offering it to Dennis. Suddenly, Polvo appears from behind and asks Aetlir to feed him too. She gives him food, and the man enters a vegetative state and faints. After some time, they are all washing the dishes and having lots of fun. After a while, Vivia remembers that Denny's was called Denny's Blacks, and now he is almost sure he is related to someone who works there. He explains that the name he uses belongs to the head chef, his adoptive mother. But he does not want to keep using that name, since he left after a serious argument. They had a huge fight when he was close to level 90. Thinking about it now, he became extremely full of himself and tried to avoid that. Everyone realizes that even Denny's went through a phase like this. Vivia now understands why he is so strong at that age, and besides that, he is at level 99, which is practically the limit. Denny's also thought he would soon reach level 100, and that is why he left the Black's restaurant. He went through several different places during that time. Denny's wanted to brag to the head chef, and because of that, he entered Silver Wing. Denny's answers that yes, and that is why he stayed longer. Despite everything, he received good help from them, but in the end, he did not reach level 100. The scene shifts to the two girls who are going to eat a little. However, they notice that it is closed. Right after, two people appear pushing the girls aside. They get irritated and manage to restrain them. But right after that, they realize that Denny's restaurant is on fire. The scene returns to Denny's, who is arriving near the city, but ends up seeing that his restaurant is burning, so he starts running to see what is happening. When he reaches the place, he finds the criminals who set the restaurant on fire. They are from the Night Mist Troupe. They do not care about anything, since they are far too arrogant, and that is exactly what they deserve. But they say they are not alone. There is Silver Wing and the Work Start House. Since everyone wants to crush Denny's, everything is over for him. Seeing the completely destroyed restaurant, they begin to remember the happy moments they spent there. Henrietta starts crying because she always ate for free at the place, and now she has nowhere to eat. Vivia is also very irritated because people hold grudges against Denny's. Bokkel starts crying because she believes it is her fault that the captain of the Night Mist Troupe is after Denny's. Denny's answers that no one is to blame for anything happening to his restaurant, and that he did not expect Silver Wing to be involved in all of this. Joseph Workstart probably went after Vigo and his instructions through Silver Wing. The Night Mist Troupe was only subcontracted to cause the fire. Denny's, who got involved on his own, had convinced himself too much that he could handle all of this alone. Vivia asks if he does not want to find all of them to put an end to this and take revenge. Denny's decides he will try to build a restaurant in a smaller city, since there is no way to fight a powerful noble and the largest adventure group, in addition to some relatively strong henchmen involved. Even so, he thanks everyone. When he enters the interior, he notices that his savings are still there, and together with Aetlir, they will create a new restaurant. However, outside, a group of strange people appears, and another episode ends. When the three returned, immediately noticed the intensity in their eyes, as if that firmness was an unbreakable barrier. It was evident that they would not give him the slightest chance to escape, especially when the darkness of the night took over. Vivia, fully determined, showed that she had finally understood his true essence. In her mind, he was someone who did not mind being watched by strangers, but reacted with irritation when very close people discovered his weaknesses. She mentally emphasized that he could not notice the presence of all the people gathered around him, all motivated by genuine concern and affection for him. They silently asked him to accept that, just as he had suffered. Each one of them also carried marks of pain that could not be erased. Vivia reinforced in her thoughts that everyone was in that restaurant, because they had been rejected in countless places. And she begged him to understand that there were people who needed him, and wanted him to stay by their side. Soon, the dust rising made it clear that the protagonist did not intend to forgive anyone who dared harm Aetlir. The weight of that feeling was so strong that the other two confirmed her position, reminding that they would not bear losing the extraordinary meals he prepared, since they spent days with nothing to eat. People who seemed to appear out of nowhere also expressed support, even though the protagonist himself did not know who they really were. Denny's, faced with all of this, felt pathetic, remembering that he had advised everyone to never give up on what they valued. But now, ironically, he was walking the opposite path. When he looked at the face of each person present, he received from Aetlir a look of approval, which made him let go of his luggage and admit to himself that he was ready to try again. The decision brought joy to those nearby, although Denny's mentally warned that he did not want to be treated as a defeated man. Henrietta, however, had already used that word, and when she noticed his discomfort, she hurried to apologize. For no clear reason, the blonde suggested that they form a team. and that they give it a name so they could build an identity. Denny's hesitated, but Aetlier was the one who suggested calling it the Restaurant of the Rejected. Despite the heavy and strange tone, the title seemed to fit that situation perfectly. Denny's did not show enthusiasm for the name, but the others accepted it without hesitation. Vivia then silently asked the protagonist to say something, and he took a deep breath before declaring that they would crush their enemies, no matter the cost. With that, the counterattack had begun. Vivia wanted to know what the plan was, but that only made him thoughtful, because he had no idea what to do. At that moment, Kate appeared suddenly, apologizing softly for being late. On behalf of Silver Wing, she also expressed regret for the fire, but Denny's reassured her, reflecting that it had not been her fault. Kate, however, revealed that they had overheard a conversation between Vigo and a hooded man about setting a specific restaurant on fire. She explained that Vigo had not set the fire with his own hands, but he had provided information, making him an indirect accomplice. As soon as she could, she ran to warn the protagonist, but everyone knew it was already too late. Even so, he repeated that it was all right, but demanded clarification regarding Vigo's actions. Kate said that although he had acted alone, she felt responsible for not stopping him. She acknowledged, however, her position as Silver Wing's vice captain, and she was fully aware that her duty was to protect. She revealed, however, that she was exposing all of this because she knew the protagonist would take action against Vigo and his group, and for that reason she could not accompany him. Dennis apologized, realizing he should not have asked such questions, since Vigo had caused him countless problems as well. For some reason, Kate interrupted her own reasoning and stated that she would only reflect slowly in her thoughts. But the anime jumped directly to the moment when the children were left speechless. Before someone at level 100, Dennis confirmed it and revealed that it was Jim Black, head chef of the Black Restaurant. The children believed she was incredibly powerful and intimidating, but the truth was very different. Vivia explained mentally that level 60 was the limit for most talented people. Few surpassed that mark and extremely few reached level 80. Among those, only a tiny number managed to reach level 90, and most failed when trying to surpass level 99. Those who reached level 100 had their names engraved in history. The protagonist interrupted in his thoughts, saying to himself that he already knew that, and did not understand why there was so much excitement. Even so, he continued explaining that those who reached level 100 received the title of sovereign. Among them were Il-Soth, progenitor of magic and king of strange artifacts; Natra, progenitor of adventurers; and Junk Fight, progenitor of skills, all of them fully recognized as sovereigns. Vivia only wanted the protagonist to understand that Jim was on the same level as these legendary figures, something never seen before. Dennis, impacted by his companion's enthusiasm, asked himself to remain calm, but he did not deny that everything the master had achieved was remarkable, since she had developed her culinary abilities entirely on her own. In combat, she did not possess the same strength as Denny's, but in the domain of cooking, no one could match her. And that was why she was so highly regarded in the capital. Precisely because of that, she sought his help to deal with the situation. The boys wondered whether she would assist them, but the protector acknowledged that nothing was certain, since it was likely she would not even open the door for them. Due to the importance of that moment, they all covered themselves with hoods, and Denny's reinforced internally that they should follow the plan without mistakes. Vivia had gone there to make a request, and the manager, enchanted by her presence, could not suppress the growing feeling inside him. Even knowing that it was part of a strategy, Bachel added that they would need to contact every renowned mage and scholar in the city, even knowing that many would refuse. But it would be necessary to insist, as they had already done with others. The lawyer, already informed about the fire, expressed sorrow. Henrietta asked whether that could be considered a crime, since the arsonists were already imprisoned, and might even lead them to the ones who commanded the attack. The lawyer explained that even if they captured the leader of the Night Mist, Argentina maintained close relations with royalty and nobility, making everything far more complicated. Henrietta already expected that answer and therefore announced that she had a plan, calling the lawyer's attention so he would listen to every detail. Meanwhile, Dusty was scolding some workers for unloading things the wrong way. Onlookers commented on his peculiar tastes, and recalled rumors stating that everyone who worked by his side became specialists, but also acquired his strange habits, which was why many acted cautiously around him. It was then that Dusty saw Aetlier and questioned internally why she was there. The man explained that it was a magical artifact connected to Wind, but that it was damaged. Soon, another man showed up and recognized Teller as the Book Girl, the name by which she was known. He himself had already begged Dennis for the loan of the books, hoping to save his wife's life. He said he had kept the items with care, waiting for the moment when he could return them when he found her again, and insisted inwardly that the book had been essential to save his wife, which was why he could not feel greater gratitude. Aetlier looked satisfied to hear that, but the man remained determined to find a way to repay the gesture. She conveyed the idea that such a return was unnecessary. Yet her eyes noticed people carrying heavy loads, and the desire to help them rose immediately. She reminded everyone that, even if it did not seem so, she had already gained renown as a mage, and already mastered almost every superior wind technique. Polvo, attentive to that statement, took the opportunity to ask for her assistance in a specific task, while each member devoted themselves earnestly to the mission. The protagonist approached that place that, in his mind, could only be his teacher's dwelling. It was impossible not to remember the embarrassing episode, when he decided to leave impulsively, without knowing how everyone would react once it was revealed. As he crossed the entrance, he noticed the workers surprised by his presence, and even though Dennis asked them to act discreetly, the rest of the group quickly came closer. The environment, however, remained positive, since the joy of seeing him again was obvious. Everyone wanted to understand what he had experienced, and learn the steps he had taken since leaving Argarentia. Dennis made a point of saying that his search was only focused on finding the teacher, but a young woman called Rasmak, now holding the position of second in command, a place that used to be his, appeared and guided him to the first in command. And so, after so long, he reunited with Jean. She showed surprise to see again that familiar face, whom she used to call the fried rice fool, treating him with evident tenderness. Jean observed that his expression seemed renewed, but wanted to know if he had already found the answer he had been seeking. The protagonist admitted to himself that he had not, even recognizing that perhaps she was right, when she said he would never reach level 100, a conclusion he had reached after countless journeys. Jean wanted to understand why he had returned, since she did not believe he had come only to meet old colleagues again. Dennis did not hesitate and revealed to the master that Katie, a friend connected to Argarentia, had told him about a lunch in which highly influential figures would gather. Among them were Joseph Workstead, judge of the Royal Court of Justice, Hopper, leader of Nightmist, and Vigo, head of Argarentia's division. When thinking of those names, only one conviction rose in his mind. They were all criminals in many ways. Dennis admitted he had no clarity about the goal of those people, but mentioned that, at some point, they would be together, and he wanted to take advantage of that circumstance. Jean reflected on what he truly expected from her, and the protagonist made it clear that he needed only information. He wanted to know when and where the meeting would occur. He was certain that, with the influence she held as the most respected cook in the capital, discovering that would not be difficult. Jean, however, remained distrustful, since, being responsible for banquets, she despised the idea of seeing any meal interrupted. Dennis, in turn, admitted that what he planned was an atrocity, but his determination showed no sign of weakening. That was how the 9th episode ended. The woman was radiant to see her adopted son again after so long apart. But the happiness was shaken when Dennis appeared only to say something unbelievable. She had not expected to hear that, and not even Dennis had imagined that his decision would lead him to that point. During all that time, she believed Dennis was only a boy who would give up whenever difficulties appeared. He always showed eagerness to train or help others, but when it concerned himself, he ended up retreating easily. Deep inside, the woman questioned what the true reason was for Dennis to be doing that. Dennis, however, had made his decision. He would do everything for the people who appreciated his food, and for the restaurant he had built. He still did not understand the weight of what he was about to face, but he knew he needed to act, even without fully understanding. His mother listened carefully and decided to grant the request, although she made it clear that Dennis would also have to listen to her. She then explained that she already led everything: a home, a way of living, the skills of a chef, a dignified life. But there was one single thing she had not taught: the final piece needed for Dennis to reach the highest level. She let a hint slip, and the scene then changed. Dennis was already outside. Deep down, he had always known it would not be easy. Even with the hint from his master, he had no idea what he was supposed to do. Time passed, and a messenger sent by his mother handed him a paper with the instructions. Written on it were every detail of a business dinner. When reading it, Dennis felt his spirit rise, and he immediately began the preparations. Meanwhile, Vigo left the center of the guild. He recalled that he had already told everyone about his departure to deal with business. He did not want to cause trouble, and believed the time spent would be useful. When entering the carriage, he thought to himself that everything would have value, but the final destination would be reached only after completing certain stages. Then, the story led us to Vigo's past. He worked without rest because his brother, weakened by a severe respiratory illness, could not help. Both had already lost their father to a disease, and their mother had run away with another man, leaving them on their own. People looked at them with pity, but that changed little about the harsh reality. Even hungry, Vigo offered the little food he received to his younger brother, almost never tasting anything himself. Even so, he felt happy just to have his brother beside him. One day, a group of nobles offered him food. When leaving that place, Vigo reflected that he could easily deceive those who thought they were kind. Whenever he visited the city, he stopped in front of a lady's house, where a dog barked at him. No one suspected anything, because they believed he was only a child. But when night fell, Vigo returned silently and eliminated the animal. Although he denied it, the butler found his brother with a shirt stained with blood. Seeing the man approaching, Vigo begged him to stop, but in the next instant struck the butler. Soon, punishment against Vigo was demanded. When his brother woke up, he saw him wounded and marked. Vigo, however, did not accept that injustice. He went to the mansion of the nobles and set the place on fire. Seeing the flames, he felt satisfaction, because now they knew the same suffering. But when looking back, he realized that his brother was no longer there. He asked himself where he might have gone, but the answer never came. After being abandoned by his brother, Vigo trained relentlessly, even with cut hands, until he became a master of the sword. One day, upon arriving in the city, he was challenged by a group of men, but he defeated them with frightening ease. He took their equipment and, soon after, joined the Silver Wings. At that time, Vigo was already at level 80, surpassed only by the captain, which impressed everyone. In the dungeons, he defeated monsters alone as if they were nothing. On one occasion, he asked his companions to move ahead, while he dealt with the enemies following behind. After a long battle, the leader approached to speak. He asked why Vigo always fought alone, reminding him that working in a group was essential. Vigo only replied in thought that he did not want to make the fight easier. The leader, however, warned that a group existed for much more than only leveling up. Suddenly, a dragon emerged from the depths of the cave. The captain asked for calm, stating that the creature would not attack if not provoked. But Vigo, with a precise strike, wounded the beast. From that moment on, he became the new leader of the Silver Wings, something he considered a great honor. However, some companions began to fall behind, unable to keep up with his pace. Little by little, the group dissolved and Vigo had to recruit new members. After a rest, the scene returned to the present. Vigo arrived at the meeting of the city's highest leaders. During the conversation, it was revealed that Hopper had been responsible for the fire in Dennis's restaurant. He, however, spoke with disdain, saying he had merely removed something useless. Vigo reassured him, guaranteeing that even if suspicions arose, nothing would happen, since they were protected by the supreme judge of the royal tribunal. In addition, they counted on the support of influential nobles, the leader of the Silver Wings, and a talented execution unit. Their future seemed secure, but they did not intend to stop there. The plan was to dominate the Shadow Kingdom. Military and political power were now united, and the Kingland royal family was nothing but a memory. Vigo mocked them, stating that they should all thank Dennis, since without him, those destinies would never have crossed. Suddenly, Vivia appeared carrying food. She said the boss had forgotten a dish and asked to leave the meal there before leaving. She brought fried rice, and everyone was confused. Joseph was the first to eat, devouring every bite. Vigo, bothered, asked him to behave, but Joseph insisted that everyone should taste it, praising the flavor. Before leaving, Vivia was stopped. Someone asked her to wait because he intended to hire the cook for his house. Vigo watched him with disdain. To him, that man was nothing but a pig easy to manipulate, just like the others sitting at the table. The judge was an opportunist who used his position for his own benefit. Vigo saw all of them only as steps. In his mind, he planned to eliminate them at the right moment, to become the hero who would free the kingdom from criminals and earn a noble title. And that would only be the beginning, because his true goal was to overthrow the king and dominate the neighboring kingdoms. When he tasted the food, Vigo recognized the flavor. It was Dennis. Moments later, he himself appeared, refusing any job offer. Decided, he stated that he would blow all of them to pieces, but Vigo warned him that nothing would come of it. If he eliminated everyone there, he would be sentenced to death. Dennis, with a firm voice, asked if they were the ones responsible for burning down his restaurant and killing Aethlier's parents. Joseph answered yes. Dennis asked him to repeat it louder, and Vigo noticed that he was using the voice of terror. He tried to stop him, but it was already too late. Dennis declared in front of everyone that each person at the table was guilty. Suddenly, Vivia showed up with a megaphone. Irritated, Vigo charged forward, but Dennis and her dodged. They fell before an unexpected audience. Important people were present and heard everything. And so, the episode reached its end. The situation becomes even more complicated. When Vigo cannot understand how all the people present could be connected to magic, many begin questioning whether what they heard was truly real. Because the restaurant that had been consumed by fire held rare and extremely valuable books about magic. People believe that if those men truly were responsible for destroying such treasures, then they were despicable individuals. The protagonist observes and explains that, in that kingdom, it is the mages and the sages who carry the duty of enforcing the law. It was not his place to judge anyone, but the kingdom's own rules and the system that sustained it. While some companions celebrated the completed mission, others were furious with the situation. The lawyer, firm, clarified to Vigo and to his partners that their statements had already been heard by all the other lawyers of the kingdom. A few minutes later, their own colleagues appeared to inform them that nothing they said could free them from that. Dennis, who was not used to acting cruelly, half-jokingly commented to Vigo, "You were the one who asked for this." The reaction was immediate, because rage consumed Vigo. He knew that the protagonist would eventually interfere in his plans to raise a military government, and he thought to himself that he had been too kind when he expelled him before. Now he would show no mercy. He would give Dennis real trouble. Dennis, without stepping back, accepted the duel and prepared his weapons. It would finally be a battle between two powerful warriors. The first strikes showed everyone Vigo's strength, who soon suffered some injuries. The protagonist, in his thoughts, could not avoid a bit of humor, reflecting on how the rival's abilities were so connected to cooking. Imagining a frying pan serving as a shield was something that truly fit him, he thought. During the clash, memories of their first encounter emerged. Kate had taken the protagonist to the tavern to recruit him. Vigo had despised him immediately, judging him as only an ordinary cook. The protagonist, however, remained firm, and Kate managed to ease the situation, insisting that his food would cheer up the group. That was how Dennis ended up joining the team. Later, in a dungeon while the others defeated a monster, Dennis was preparing steaks to turn them into hamburgers. Even though the mission had been completed, Vigo became irritated, ordering everyone to hurry. He wanted to continue hunting creatures to raise La Argentia's fame. Dennis remembered clearly how, that day, Dennis had been praised by Vigo for his ambition, a quality that, according to him, was not bad as long as it was used properly. At that moment, Vigo had said firmly that Argentia should be the best, stealing the shine of the others. The protagonist, however, showed no interest in that kind of ambition, which only increased Vigo's irritation. When he asked why Dennis aimed for level 100, he received no answer, because the hamburgers ended up burning, interrupting the conversation. At mealtime, everyone became cheerful, especially Katie, who declared it to be her favorite food in the world. Dennis prepared extra portions, satisfied to see her smiling. Katie revealed that, ever since his arrival, the group had become happier and more united, not only because of the food, but also thanks to his contributions in alchemy and medicine, which had saved him several times. Even Vigo knows that, she stated. But the warrior, proud, denied it immediately. Dennis was not bothered. To him, actions spoke louder than words. Sometime later, Vigo expelled another member of the group, claiming that there was no space for useless people. The boy asked for another chance, but Vigo rejected him without hesitation. Dennis, however, approached and offered him rice cakes with healing effects, asking him to seek a place where he would truly be valued. How could that young man never have realized who Vigo truly is? Dennis wondered. Days later, the Argentia was scolded by a noble after failing a mission. He and his wife even mocked the members, hoping that one of them would die just to make a story. That made Vigo's blood boil, and he almost attacked them, but Dennis held him back in time. Later, in a tavern, Vigo complained, saying he hated those born in golden cradles who still had the courage to look down on them. "They will swallow every word and crawl before us," he promised, while Dennis listened in silence, believing that certain things could never be changed, no matter how great the anger. Back in the present, Dennis realizes he is at a disadvantage before Vigo's corrosive ability. He knows that if he is hit, he can die easily. But even so, he decides to use a resource to sharpen his senses and try to balance the fight. Vigo, provocative, asks why Dennis gets so involved, being someone always distant and unconcerned. He accuses him of pretending, claiming that he only came this far because he was adopted by a wealthy mother. The battle continues intense. Dennis tries to use his metal pans as traps, but Vigo breaks them effortlessly, while the protagonist's physical strain becomes evident. Then Dennis releases a smoke to conceal his presence, a strategy that annoys Vigo, who shouts that he had been mistaken about him, and that, deep down, Dennis was nothing but a loser. Vigo exalts his own hawk's heart, saying that he would not bow to anyone and that he would soon win. Vivia watches, astonished, at the destruction caused by two level 99 warriors, something she never imagined she would witness. The others are also stunned, while Aetlier sees Dennis being struck down, and cannot hide her concern. Still standing, Dennis feels time dragging slowly, his sharpened senses giving him a chance to resist. However, he knows that if nothing changes, the end will be inevitable, because Vigo is overwhelming. Tired, Dennis thinks about what he desires most: to cook freely, to have his own restaurant, to take care of others like an older brother and offer help to anyone who needed it. To him, that lifestyle was already enough, but perhaps not enough to reach level 100. He recalls when they said he would remain stuck at level 99. In his memory, Dennis had confided to Jean that he felt his efforts were useless, despite his constant progress. Jean, however, had explained that, to reach the maximum level, something beyond was required. One could not live halfway. That had always been his mistake, he said. Dennis found that absurd and, frustrated, asked what exactly he lacked. Jean had told him once that while he lacked clarity in his heart, no matter how much he tried, he simply would not reach what he sought. In the present, Dennis rises slowly, reflecting to himself. He asks himself why he decided to become a cook, why he dedicated so many hours of his life to preparing meals. He questions why the head chef welcomed him at a time when he had no place to go. He remembers vividly the day she served him the most special dish he had ever tasted. A simple fried rice, but with a flavor he never forgot. He thought, was it that dish that guided me, or not? Perhaps it had not been only that. Then he realized that maybe it had not been just the meal, but the warmth it carried. That sensation of comfort rising from each bite. He understood now that he did not seek only to be served, but wished to serve others who, like Aetlier, Bockel, Vivia, and Henrietta, also needed something that could make them smile. Perhaps, he reflected, Dennis had always dreamed of becoming someone special to that kind of person. Someone capable of offering not only food, but hope. Finally, he accepts that this was the true reason why he chose the kitchen as his path. But his body does not follow his mind. Exhausted, he begins to lose his strength and faints, until the distressed voices of the girls bring him back. He awakens, still dazed, and hears their cries of concern. At the final moment, Dennis asks Taylor not to allow defeat. He thinks to himself, surprised, I cannot believe I left all of them so distressed. At that moment, Vigo delivers a devastating attack. However, Dennis remembers Jim's words. Level 100 is not something one pursues with anxiety. It is not a distant goal to be reached. He used to say that level 100 arrives without one even noticing it. Jim had also told the fable of the blue bird, who traveled through Dockware in search of happiness, never realizing that it had always been right before him. It was the same with the levels. The difference between 99 and 100 was almost imperceptible. What already existed inside him simply needed to manifest. Dennis had never understood what his master meant, but in that instant everything made sense. With renewed conviction, he stops Vigo's strike, as if it were only a gust of wind. Something unexpected, however, begins to occur. His body becomes wrapped in colored lights. He thinks, now I understand. Strength is not everything. Dennis smiles in the middle of the battle, feeling that he can finally become the strongest chef. Not only because of skill, but because he would be the one to protect the smiles of all those he loved. And the boys immediately connect the power released by Dennis to his heightened abilities. And as soon as this process completes, he advances decisively toward Vigo. Dennis fires several bursts of energy at his enemy, but Vigo moves with agility, dodging all of them and leaping into the air. Vigo's fury explodes into words, claiming that Dennis is nothing more than a simple cook. However, the remark barely ends before Dennis strikes him head-on, his kitchen knives clashing against the opponent's sword. Next, Dennis states firmly that Vigo will never again be accepted in his restaurant, invoking his special technique called forced expulsion. The name may sound strange, but it serves as a mark for that blow. Immediately, a crushing pressure descends upon Vigo, forcing him against the ground. He realizes he has lost his balance and tries to stand, but his body is unable to move beneath the force pinning him to the floor. The impact intensifies and opens a hole below him, leading him to question whether Dennis controls gravity. Soon, however, he understands that this goes far beyond that. While watching, KV explains to the girls that what they see is Dennis's unique level 100 ability. Bockel, astonished, finds it strange that Vigo keeps sinking, for he had never heard of anything like it. Henrietta, unlike them, remains silent, merely admiring with deep respect Chef Dennis's seriousness. Vigo, for his part, continues to be pressed relentlessly, as if hurled through space, ignoring any natural law, unable to understand the nature of that technique. He despises the comical name given to the power, but even amid the suffering, he insists on not yielding, refusing to end his story there. Gradually, the force holding him dissipates. Unable to withstand the accumulated damage, he loses consciousness. Exhausted, Dennis breathes with difficulty. When he realizes the fight is over, his body reaches its limit, and he collapses. The boys run to him in time to catch him, setting him down with care. Still conscious, Dennis hears from them an account of what he accomplished, but the weight of exhaustion speaks louder. He simply asks, with simplicity, for a plate of fried rice. Soon after, he approaches Thalia to hand her the bracelet. When Dennis places it on her arm, he thanks her for the care she always showed. In silent response, she raises her fist, and Dennis, smiling, taps his own against hers. Jen watches the scene quietly. Meanwhile, Giuseppe and the others are detained by the mages, taken by the authorities, while Kate observes everything from a distance, discreetly. Later, at the Black Restaurant, Kate meets with Jen at a table. Her first question is how Dennis reached level 100. Jen calls her Graciel Crimson, the new captain of the Argentian group, presuming she herself wanted to witness the events. Kate confirms and adds that she planned to intervene if she saw Dennis at risk. but Jen remarks that she should have done that during the battle, since he nearly lost his life. Kate admits she had never seen Vigo fighting with such seriousness, which frightened her. She also acknowledges that if she had approached recklessly, he could have destroyed her easily. Next, she comments on the known human limit, level 7. Very few have ever reached it throughout history, and no one knows exactly what conditions allow one to surpass it. For that reason, she wants to understand how Dennis managed to cross the barrier between levels 99 and 100. She also remembers that Clara, another respected chef, also reached level 100. Jen explains that such a tier is not reached through already existing techniques, but through discovering the true reason for being alive. It is something singular, something that only each person can accomplish. When she hears it, Kate partially understands, but admits she still has not grasped everything. Jen adds another point. It is not a coincidence that Dennis and she appeared as level 100 chefs at the same time, even though they followed different paths. While Jen pursued the peak of cooking to become the best, Dennis dreamed of becoming the strongest chef, protecting the smiles of everyone around him. He needed the power to expel any intruder who threatened his territory, meaning the restaurant. From that determination came his ability, forced expulsion. Kate reflects on that and questions whether this technique truly helps in his role as a cook, since it seems more fitting for a bar. Jen agrees. In another scene, Heath calmly enjoys a meal in front of a restaurant. He turns to his companion, Fiorenza, asking why she is not eating as well. She replies that her duty is to protect him at all times, something he considers unnecessary. Suddenly, Fiorenza comments on the possible consequences after the fall of Joseph and Vigo, believing that both were connected to Heath's plans. He asks her why she would trust such despicable individuals. She admits she considered using Vigo if she had the opportunity, but he possessed no special lineage and was no longer available. She then asks whether Dennis defeating him was a surprise, and he answers that it was not, because Dennis is her younger brother. Meanwhile, Dennis receives a visit from the children, who arrive excited to learn about his recovery. He asks them to be more careful, because their hugs stir the pain of his wounds, and it becomes clear how much his body is still wrapped in bandages. Vivia rejoices at his improvement, though she is surprised by how fast he is healing. Henrietta, proud, comments that the chef regenerates like a monster, which makes Dennis uncomfortable. He asks whether they came only to bother him or to keep him company. Henrietta clarifies that the purpose is to visit him, and then Bachl shows several sheets of paper revealing construction plans. Dennis, confused, does not understand at first, but they explain there is no reason to hide anything anymore. They are blueprints to rebuild the restaurant. Surprised, Dennis hears that everyone spoke with people from the construction field and received the promise that the place would be built again, since nothing can be erected without a proper design. Everyone worked together to create the plans. When he sees it, Dennis shows immense joy, but as he examines the details, he notices it is not identical to the previous restaurant. Bachl explains they used the opportunity to rethink the interior, suggesting improvements as a group. Dennis agrees that it looks great, until he notices the bathtub is larger than it should be. Aetlier answers that there is no issue at all and insists, even when Dennis mentions the subject again, making it clear he loves the idea. However, when he looks again, Dennis notices something unusual. The wall facing the street is missing. Vivia firmly points out that the entire idea came from her, since they intended to renew the place completely. It needed to look more modern, and that is why the adventurer's restaurant would have a glass facade. Dennis barely pays attention to her explanation, and mutters that a simple dining room does not need to look luxurious. But Vivia ignores him and continues, stating that half of the hall would be filled with well-arranged group tables and private booths, trusting that the most experienced adventurers would gather there. Dennis frowns and replies quietly that a place like his does not need additions of that sort. After releasing a long sigh, he looks again at the drawings and asks, "And that enormous rectangle in the middle of the tables, what is it supposed to be?" Henriette immediately takes responsibility for the idea. She explains that she heard about a famous restaurant in the capital that had a huge aquarium full of shrimp and fish right in the center of the hall. Dennis places a hand on his head and emphasizes once again that they were not running a refined establishment, but a simple room that served bread with pork crackling. Even so, no one seems to pay attention to his complaint. He thinks, almost ironically, that at the very least the bread was delicious. Henriette continues the explanation. If someone ordered a dish, the animals would be taken from the aquarium to ensure maximum freshness. Dennis, openly displeased, rejects the idea immediately. In a blunt tone, he declares that if there were an aquarium, he would end up eating everything at once without even waiting for an order. Henriette pretends to be offended and retorts that not even she would do something so reckless. Dennis chooses not to extend the discussion and changes the subject, pointing at the drawing that indicated a basement in the plans. Benny then raises his hand proudly, revealing the idea was his. He explains that he believed in the restaurant's success after the renovation, and when that happened, Dennis would have to hire new employees. Dennis, still suspicious, agrees partially and reminds everyone that Henriette would soon move to work at the new place. While he reflects on the usefulness of a basement, Bockel steps in and explains that it would serve as housing for the staff, since by living there, they could work all the time. For a moment, Dennis almost agrees, but then he realizes the absurdity of the proposal. Silently, he thinks it sounded like exploitation disguised as a benefit, and his expression makes the others grow tense. Without noticing the seriousness of the comment, Bear casually adds that the basement would be soundproof, so if he needed to call someone, no one would ever hear it. Dennis, alarmed, demands an explanation, hoping it was only a tasteless joke. Later, Vivi takes a few minutes to rest outside. She feels calm in that moment and decides to recall what happened afterward. She explains that the entire magical community came forward to report the crimes of Giuseppe's group, which led the government to arrest every individual involved. The position of head of the Workstad clan remained vacant, since Tellerier did not seem willing to assume the role, and therefore Sextavici, along with the magical community, was discussing which decision to take. Researchers from the capital were evaluating ways to restore the burned books, something extraordinary if they succeeded. Another positive piece of news was that the restaurant had already been rebuilt. Polvo kept his workers busy at all times, ensuring every detail was perfect, as if they reflected his own character. The employees showed the same tireless dedication. Vivi comments that that day would be the official opening, and that she had asked for leave solely to attend. Henrietta, who was now part of the Knights, would also come. Bockel, who taught in the capital and escaped prison, would likewise join the celebration. After that, she recalls the words that had been spoken. When everyone believes the end has come, someone always finds strength to rise again. Even if one cannot do it alone, one can stand if someone reaches out a hand. And that was exactly what Dennis had taught them all. Then the doubt arises. Did he himself believe that he could become a great sorcerer, as he had promised? Dennis acknowledges that it is still far too early to answer, that he must first learn to stand and walk, because he wants to see with his own eyes what lies beyond. Before the restored grave, he feels a quiet joy, and murmurs, in thought, a silent promise, assuring that he would see her again. In the marketplace, Dennis asks Tellerier whether there was anything else to buy. She answers that there was not. He, distrustful, lists several items that could be missing, but she insists they already had everything. At that moment, Tellerier becomes distracted when she notices a common bird flying high above, and while she watches it, she ends up being bumped into by a man rushing past. She apologizes, a little confused, and for a moment she feels lost again. However, Dennis's voice echoes from afar, calling to her, and that fills her with joy. Dennis, not understanding her reaction, asks what happened. Tellerier simply replies, smiling, that it was nothing, and asks that they continue forward, showing on her face a sincere happiness that surprises him. Soon after, the local residents begin greeting them warmly, and Tellerier responds with kindness. Later, Dennis places the sign at the entrance of the establishment and reads aloud the new name, Exile's Restaurant. He comments to the children that the title sounds strange, and that, in his opinion, he would not enter a place with such a name. Henrietta counters, saying the name conveys excitement, while Bockel claims that Adventurer's Restaurant was far too common. Dennis then seeks Aitlier's opinion, but when he turns to her, he receives only a confident nod of approval, which was expected, since she was the one who had suggested the title. A few minutes later, Vivia arrives and says the name is excellent, leading Dennis to think that only he had bad taste. The girls argue back, claiming they never said anything of the kind, hinting that he was backing down. Dennis, in a teacher-like tone, opens the book on restaurant management to lecture them, but he is silenced when Bockel pushes him into the hall. As soon as they enter, everyone is left speechless. The interior remained exactly the same as before. Dennis comments that no one would ever have the courage to follow those eccentric plans to the end. Aitlier sighs, disappointed, because she still dreamed of the enormous bathtub. Noticing this, Dennis ruffles her hair and asks if she wants to help him in the kitchen. She accepts immediately, her eyes shining with excitement. The two head into the kitchen and soon ask the group for suggestions. Henrietta requests the vitricats. Vivia asks for fried rice with crab, and Bockel wants the traditional fried shrimp. Dennis smiles and treats them as if they were his very first customers. In little time, he prepares each dish with dedication and serves it at the table. The appearance of the food surprises everyone, who react with delight. Dennis also places a generous serving of fried rice in front of Aitlier, a gesture that leaves her captivated. The atmosphere comes to life, filled with laughter and praise for the meal. Watching that scene, Dennis silently offers his thanks, because he knew he could only preserve what he loved most thanks to them. At that moment, a new group enters the restaurant. Among them are the twins, who quickly make their orders. Even Polvo shows interest in tasting a dish. Dennis smiles and comments to Tellerier that they would be very busy from that point forward. Aetlier, unconcerned, simply gives him an encouraging nod in return, and everyone joins together to welcome the newcomers to the Exiles restaurant.